Welcome traders. In this video we're going to go over creating a new BloodHound template. Just a few weeks ago I held a BloodHound webinar and there have been several traders that have purchased BloodHound and are new to ZoneTraderPro and BloodHound. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a very interesting look at creating a BloodHound template. But we're also going to review in the second video the KP2 ratio and the KP2 trade by trade. So that should be pretty interesting. What we're going to do is we're going to create a BloodHound template from scratch. So in order to do that, we want to take a template that we've already used. So I'm in the Documents NinjaTrader 8 Templates BloodHound folder, and the folder and the file that I want to use is ZTP Slim Logic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste that here, because what I want to do is I want to use it specifically for this 7.5 zigzag. So I'm going to rename it ZTP Slim Logic 7.5 and then close that out. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to create a chart. So in order to make it easy on the computer for the load times, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the tick value. We can set it higher in this instance because we're looking at a 7.5 zigzag. And I only need about 5 days of data in the chart. And you notice what I did is I took off tick replay. That's because when tick replay is employed, it dramatically slows down the chart. So I want to create a pretty simple chart and without a bunch of stuff on it. But I do have a template. So I'm going to load that template up right here, ZTP 7.5, and then going to get this result. Okay, what I want to do is I want to come to the indicators, and I have configured the zigzag ZTP and I've changed the deviation points to 7.5. Now for this exercise I'm not going to need the divergence indicator, so I want to make it invisible right now. But the important settings are that the deviation value be set to 7.5, the deviation contracts be set to 1, and I am not going to reconstruct the tape here. I'm going to look at all contracts, so I put a min-max filter of 1 to 2000. The same numbers apply to the KP2 ratio. I'm not reconstructing the tape, 1 to 2000, 7.5, and 1. Again, I don't need to see that, so I'm going to make it invisible right now. The midline, I don't need to see that right now. That'll be in the next video. The KP2 itself, again, the same values. I'm not reconstructing the tape, 1 to 2000, 7.5, 1. And then these are going to be the important values right here. What I've done is I've gone and opened up the windows for some of these trades, because as you know from the training video, we have the ability to adjust what is a pattern. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set zigzag ticks equal to 30. So that is a 7-point zigzag. Now I've also gone and changed the font up here to Arial and 20 point. But the important parts of this come here. So we're enabling the trend trade, and I'm changing this distance to counter to 4 so that we don't have to be exactly right on with this much larger zigzag. And warning line from intermediate is important, because what that does is that sets up the reversal trade. So what I'm saying is, in order to get a reversal trade, I need at least 8 ticks of adverse excursion here. And that is something that I haven't done any testing on, and something that you should be doing testing on. So that is that setting there. Warning line from intermediate on these other settings only applies to where the trade is going to not be valid anymore. So by putting a warning line of 4 here, I'm saying it can go 4 ticks through the blue intermediate zone and still be a valid trade. The 6 here, distance from minor, allows it to come 6 ticks through the minor zone and still be a valid exhaustion pattern. I've opened up the distance from counter here to 4. On reversal trade, distance from intermediate 4. Tick divergence, it's not going to be used very often, but I put that at a 5. The strong trend, there is no setting. And the strong trend reversal, I've changed from a 3 to a 4, and the same one down in the broken reversal. I've changed both of these down to 4s. So what you need to do next is you need to take a picture of this so that you know exactly these numbers that you're looking at. So I have a program here called MW Snap, and so I'm going to take a real quick picture of this so that I have it in the next part of the exercise for reference. And then I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to load the new logic template onto the chart. So I go to File and Slim Logic 7.5 BHT. Go ahead and load that, and this is what we get. We have our default time frame here, and these are the 3.5 point zigzag patterns, and I'm going to keep that. I'm going to want that. I have 4 range volumetric patterns, which I am going to want. I'm not going to need the extension pattern, so I'm going to get rid of that. On the 5 range, again, these are the 4 that I want, and I'm going to get rid of the extension. And I don't need a 3 range, so I'm going to get rid of that. But what I have to do first is I have to get rid of some of the logic that I don't need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the logic board, and the one that I'm going to want to keep is this one called All Patterns. So I'm just going to start deleting the logic templates that I don't want until I'm just left with order flow confirmation all patterns. Now, the reason I did this is that I want BloodHound to only be doing the solvers that I'm interested in. One of the things about BloodHound is it's an indicator that runs inside of an indicator. So by putting extra solvers in here, you're making it do extra work, even if you don't have that solver in the logic. So that is super important, that we have as slim a result as possible. So what do I want to do next? Well, what I want is I want an 8 range volumetric bar here. And so what I want to do is I want to come up and I want to change this to an 8, and you'll see that this then changes to an 8 range volumetric. Now, because I already did this, I made a huge mistake that took me about 20 minutes to figure out. And that huge mistake that took 20 minutes to figure out is typical of when you're working with BloodHound. Anytime that you see something that you do not expect, well, what is almost 99.99% the problem is going to be you making a mistake. So what I had done then is I had gone and I created this 8 range ZTP order flow. So I just changed the description. And then what I want is I want a POC absorption. So I'm going to copy that. I want a POC extension, so I copy that. And then I move both of these down to the 8 range volumetric. Now I can get rid of the 3 range, so I'm not going to use that. And now I'm just going to pause, and if what I want to do is I want you to freeze the video at this point and see if you could figure out what my mistake was that I did the first time. It was huge. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to close this, and I am going to test this logic, and I'm going to show you what happened. So I'm going to come and create the solver nodes. So there's the order flow. There's the POC absorption. And there's the extension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all three of these up here. And this is basically what you should do anyway when you're going to be testing something. So I'm going to add an OR node. And so basically what I'm saying is if I get any one of these order flow signals to show me that result. So I'm going to close this out. First I'm going to save it because I've already done some work and I don't want to lose it. So we're going to save it, close it out, and then I'm going to come back here and do a F5 reload. Okay, so this is how I found my mistake. I've loaded 14 days into the chart so that I could demonstrate the mistake. And originally, this is what I saw. I saw that when I went back in time, I had BloodHound correctly printing the patterns. But then when I advanced it into this current time frame, all I got was this green. So rather than saying that BloodHound had a problem, I knew that I was the one that had the problem. So we're going to come back and we're going to look at what is going on right here. And if you haven't figured it out already, what the problem was is that on my template that I just copied this from, the order flow was set to the ES 920 expiration glowbacks and not the pound glowbacks. So I needed to change that. And change all of these others so that we are not worried about an expiration date. Again, go ahead and save the file, and I want to do an F5 reload to see if that fixed the problem. And now when we look at the full chart, what do you know? We have signals going the entire 2-week period. So like I said, it is very important that you get that right, because if you see a problem with BloodHound, you generally know that you are the one that made the error. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to make my patterns here, and I want to make 7.5 zigzag patterns. So we're going to come to the first pattern right here, and we're going to use it as a template. Now, what do I mean by that? So we're going to highlight it, and then we're going to come to indicator here and bring it up. This is the reason I went and made my screen grab of all of my settings right here, so that I don't get anything wrong. And one of the other things that I've done is that because the shark indicator's BloodHound indicator is an indicator running inside of an indicator, what I've done is I've gone and I've changed all of the enableds to false, except for the enabled that I am looking for, because I am worried that BloodHound is actually going in and doing the math for if this were to be set, if the reversal trade were to be set to true, I would be worried that BloodHound is actually going and trying to compute that also, when there's no need for it to do that. So for right now, what I've gone and done is I've gone and set everything to false except for the pattern that I am interested in, the strong trend reversal. So I'm going to make a copy of that, and here it is. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make a note and in the description, and I want to make the description reflect that I am now doing 30 ticks. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and change the tick setting. Now, what I'm now going to do, I don't need to change the true false because it's still the strong trend reversal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change all of the settings here, and you can work along with me. And because what we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of this, and we're not going to have to re-enter in all of the settings all over again. So the first thing we're going to find is the trend trade, which is down here. And the distance from counter, we're going to set that to a 4. And the warning line, we're going to set that to 8. So again, remember the warning distance is important because it sets up the reversal. The next thing is the exhaustion trade, and I want to set the distance from minor to a 6. The counter trend trade, I want to set that to a 4. The reversal trade, I want to set to a 4. The tick divergence is not applicable in the BloodHound version. It doesn't work. Don't try to set it. The strong trend, there is no setting. And the strong trend reversal is set to a 4 and a 4. So I'm going to change it from a 3 and a 3. And the same way with broken reversal, I'm going to set that to a 4 and a 4. So what I've done now is I've gone and basically made this my template for all of the other patterns. So now when I copy this, I'm going to make 6 copies of this. And I'm going to come and rename each one of these. Okay, so now what I've done is I've gone and I've just named all of the patterns right here. I haven't adjusted any of the settings. And it was really a good idea to use strong trend reversal because you end up basically using a version of these words in most of these other descriptions. So I want to come to trend, and I will come over here, and the first thing I want to do is I want to change strong trend and reversal enable. I want to change that to false. And then I want to enable the trend trade right here. And I need to change the plot here for a trend trade so that this is telling BloodHound what to pick up. So now the trend trade is done. Same thing with the reversal. First thing, disenable the strong trend trade, enable the reversal trade, and change the signal plot. Now there is one thing I want to point out when doing the strong trend is that first we go ahead and disable that. We enable the strong trend here, but I want to show a caution here because there's the strong trend trade, which is the one we should be checking, but there's also a strong trend alert, and that's not what you want to be interested in. So there are our settings for all of these. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and test those. So we're going to come back to the logic board, and we're going to add in those 30 tick solvers. Okay, now I've got all 7 of those on the chart. What I want to do is I want to test them before I go and do anything else, just to make sure that I haven't made any mistakes. Again, this is so important because all you got to do is make one small mistake and you will spend hours trying to figure it out. So what I've done here, here are my 7 patterns. I want a OR node here. I'm going to connect them all up to the OR node. And then from the OR node, I'm going to connect that into the result down here. So now we should only have, we should only have patterns on the chart. Again, let's go ahead and make sure we save our work. Do a reload. And now what we're looking at is pretty much what I expected to see. I don't see any problems here. And this is the reason for having the patterns on the chart also, so that if we had a problem, we would see the problem. We would see the pattern printing, and we would see something else happening. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back to the template and go to the logic. Now what I want to do next is I want to connect all of the patterns to the order flow. So what I'm going to need for that is I'm going to need another AND node, and I'm going to put that AND node right there, and I'm going to connect up the OR node from there and the OR node from there. And then you don't have to actually delete that there. All you need to do is bring that down into the result, and the result will automatically update that. So what I should have now is I should have any pattern with any one of these 3 order flow indications. And in thinking about it, I actually want to add the 8 range. I want to have an 8 range exhaustion also. So I'm going to come back to here to the solvers. I'm going to find that exhaustion right there, make a copy, and then move it down here. And then just remember to change the name. So we're going to put an 8 there, and we're going to do that to the other ones also, so that they all have a unique name. Again, go ahead, save the work, come back to the logic board, add the exhaustion, into there, and we now have the board looking the way that I want it to. Let's go ahead and do a refresh. Okay, everything is looking pretty good, but I did notice something here, and what I noticed is I was wondering why this broken reversal pattern wasn't taken, and I then quickly realized the reason why. We are basically setting our stops at 4. So if you have a stop set at 4, that's the warning line. Then once it's gone to the 5th tick, then it's going to stop computing and not give you this trade. What is really the point here is that the zigzags are set to 7.5 points. So what we're dealing with is, this looks like just a regular normal old everyday pattern that's occurring right here. But in fact, we're getting on this trade, it traded from 32.40 all the way down to 32.28, a 12-point move. And it's hard to realize that that was 12 points because we're just looking at it here. Now, if I go to look at this, and the beginning of the zone was at 30.75, and price traded as low as 28.75. So maybe I need to set a 2-point stop rather than, or a 2.5-point stop rather than just a 2. Because what's going to happen here is we're not going to get the order flow to the positive side until right here. So our entry is actually going to be right here at the beginning of the zone. And that would give us a trade from 30.75 up to 38. So almost well over a 7-point trade. So I think it's probably a pretty good idea to change the warning lines so that we give ourselves a little more room because of the much larger zigzag that we're using. But of course, what you're going to have to do for any trading system that you develop is to test this and test it with what values you feel comfortable with. Just because I'm using a 10, that's not me advising you to go do that. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change both the indicator and I'm going to change the BloodHound template to reflect those values. So now that I've gone and made those changes, we see that now we had a buy signal here on the broken reversal. And we actually had several buy signals taking us up to the high right there. And I ended up using different values for each one. So the strong trend and the strong trend reversal, I ended up using a 6 for the warning, because if it's gone further than 6 ticks through there, then I'm not going to want it. For the trend trade, I ended up using a 9. The 9, of course, is going to set up the reversal pattern. For the reversal trade itself, I ended up using a 10. For the broken reversal, I ended up using a 10. For the counter trend trade, I only gave it a 8. For the strong trend, I just said I gave it a 6. And for the exhaustion, I gave it a 6. Exhaustion distance from minor set to 6. And the warning distance set to 6. Again, there is no right or wrong answer in this. Like I said, basically what you need to do is you need to go and make your own trading plan and test out your own numbers. And that's basically what BloodHound is for. Okay, now that we've got that, what I want to do is I want to add in the logic that we have down here from the 3.5 zigzag and the 4 and 5 volumetric. So what that's going to look like is this. First off, we're not going to need the 8 range ZTP order flow down here because we have it up top. And then what we want is we want an OR condition here, and we actually want to add a time block to this right here. Now I am in the Eastern time zone, so my time block is set for 9:30 to 1600. If you're in a different time zone, the way you change that is you just click the indicator here where it says time block, and then you change the beginning and end times right here. Okay, what I want to do next is I want to make sure that when I have this going on right here, I also want to have some kind of larger scale pattern. So in order to do that, I bring this OR node down into here, and now I'm saying that I need to have something here, which is the 7.5 point zigzag, something here which is a 3.5 point zigzag, and then something here which is either the 4 or 5 range order flow. Now, when I have that, I'm going to bring both of these into this node right here and then connect that up to the result. And BloodHound's going to think about that for a second. So what was the reason that I went ahead and did this down here? The reason I went ahead and did this down here is if we have a valid pattern with the smaller range order flow, that can get us into the trade about a point sooner. So that's the purpose of this right here. Maybe all you want to see is the longer range order flow, which does carry a lot of weight, along with one of the patterns. If that's what you want to see, then just break this connection right here, and that's what you'll end up getting. And basically take all this stuff off the chart, remove all the solvers, and have a much thinner file. So now that I'm pretty sure that this is going to be what I want, again, going to go ahead and save it and check to see what BloodHound is saying. Actually, before I do that, what I should be doing is I should be checking the patterns and order flow part of this. So what I want to see is I want to see that this is working properly with this. So that would probably be a better idea. In order to do that, I've got to have my other charts open and available, and I'll go ahead and check that. And I'm happy with what I'm seeing. So we'll come back over, connect everything back up, save this, and I now have a template that I can work for. That basically concludes this video. And the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm actually going to add where we have spider divergence occurring along with these trades, and basically look to see if this can create a better trading system and try to figure out some stops and some targets for myself. So I want to thank you for watching. If you would like the template for this chart or the BloodHound template, just get a hold of me on Skype and I will send that to you. Thanks, take care, and stay safe.